Thank you for joining us today for the webinar on scaling digital and open educational resources. So without further ado, I'd like to hand the mic over to Dr. Jill Bubin, OLC Senior Director of Research and Innovation, to help get us started today. The floor is all yours, Jill.
Good afternoon, everyone. And for those of you joining us from the West Coast, good morning. On behalf of the Online Learning Consortium, welcome to today's webinar sponsored by EdMap and VitalSource. As Caitlin mentioned, I'm Jill Bubin, Senior Director of Research and Innovation at the Online Learning Consortium. Prior to joining OLC, I was Associate Provost at an institution at which I was responsible for the transition of 450 courses to OER and digital resources. I share this with you all as I understand the challenges and rewards in collecting, curating, and scaling OER and digital resources. I'm thrilled to be joined today by this wonderful group of experts in the field as our panelists. Today we'll be joined by Mike Hale, the Vice President of Education for VitalSource, Jerry Hanley, Assistant Vice Chancellor at Cal State University System, and big friend and family member of OLC, Kate Freeborn, Manager of Content Strategy at Capella University, and Noah Lamb, Director of Student Accounts and Auxiliary Services at Hodges University. I'm going to ask our panelists to please take a few moments to introduce yourself and describe very briefly how you interact with OER and digital resources. Mike?
Yes, thanks. This is Mike Hale. I am responsible for the education business for VitalSource. Although I've been with VitalSource for 13 years, I came from the university and school side. I was in a school of education prior to. And so I've been interacting with content for courses for quite a long time. And our role with OER is the same as our role with any content. We're great believers in ensuring that all students receive the content they need to be successful in school, and quality should be an important element. But the role we play is really on the scalability side, because we can deliver the content and we can ensure that it's accessible, that is 508 compliant. We are connected with most of the distribution channels, including great partners like EdMap, and we can have a uniformity of experience with that content and can deliver to the educators and the learners dashboards that help them understand the interaction with that content. And of course, it helps that students can access their content online or offline on their mobile devices or desktops. And we're also pleased to be the distributor for some of the CSU's excellent collections with Merlot, Skills Commons, and Cool for Ed.
Great, thanks, Mike. Jerry, could you please briefly introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Jill. As the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Academic Technology at the California State University System, where we have 23 campuses, about 500,000 students, and about 24,000 faculty, always working in peace and harmony with everyone. The important priorities that we have is making sure education has high quality, and a lot of the points that Mike make, high quality, the availability of the content so our students can succeed and graduate in a timely manner. And open education resources, I've been the executive director of Merlot. It's good wine, but it's also the multimedia educational resources for learning and online teaching, and is really a library of that open education resources. I'll talk later on some other projects that we have, and as it says here, we've been a long time collaborator with the Online Learning Consortium, just a wonderful group of people who really enable online learning and innovation to proceed. So Jill, I'll pass it back to you.
Excellent, thanks, Jerry. Kate Freeborn from Capella. Kate, can you provide the audience a brief introduction?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Kate Freeborn. I'm the Manager of Content Strategy at Capella University. Capella is an online university, about 38,000 learners, and Here at Capella, we spent the last 18 months transitioning into a digital-first strategy. So when we started this process, we had just over 5% of our textbook list offered as an affordable ebook. And we've moved up to close to 90% of our content being offered digital first to our learners. So been an exciting time to partner with EdMap and VitalSource and all of our publishers to make that transition. We have a centralized curriculum and course development process here, but our learning resources are chosen by faculty members. So like all universities, we have a really diverse pool of content, and that includes some OER. So I'm excited to talk more about that later in the conversation.
Hi, everyone. I am Noah Lamb, and I'm the Director of Student Account Services and Auxiliary Operations for Hodge University. We are a private nonprofit institution located in Florida. With my position over content management and either any course material migrations, I'm really the head of that when it comes to the student side and any implementations that we have through any textbook solutions vendors. So I'm very excited to talk about this today. We're very excited about moving towards with more online availability, more ebooks, and more open educational resources for our institution. As Kate stated, we're very similar to Capella. We honestly had less than 50% electronic materials before we actually contracted with EdMap and VitalSource, to where now we are currently at approximately 70%, and we're really looking to go into that 90% range of electronic materials and OERs in the next few semesters. So I'm very excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you, Noah. And so we're going to get right into the conversation today. And as Caitlin mentioned, please feel free to ask questions in the chat box as we go through these questions with the panelists. And we'll address them in the chat box, and we'll also have some time for question and answers at the end. So Jerry, can you start us off talking about the general OER landscape? You have such a vast array of experiences regarding OER. If you could tell us a little bit about the current landscape, and then, Mike, if you could join in as well, that would be wonderful.
Great. Thanks, Jill. And by vast array of experience, you mean I've been around a long time? I'm an old guy, huh? And really, just I really do appreciate the opportunity to talk about the landscape. And I think for the audience, if you think about a landscape picture, in any landscape picture, you're going to have flowers, you're going to have trees, you're going to have animals there, you're going to have features of the landscape. And in the OER landscape, you think about flowers as being the learning resources. And there are many, many different types by discipline, by the size of those things. You can have open courseware, which is full course materials with often the syllabi and the learning materials. Then you have open electronic textbooks or open textbooks, and so those are another type of asset that's in the OER landscape. Then you have open access journal articles, and there are organizations creating directories of these open access journals. So you have journal articles. Then you have course modules, simulations, and animations. So really the landscape of the type of materials of open education resources is very diverse and really can allow an institution to choose those types of materials that are useful for your institution there, and really enable the faculty to choose what's best for their students. Now, what are the kind of fundamental characteristics of these flowers or open education resources is, one, they're often free. There's a version that's freely available as free of cost, but what's also important is that you have the freedom to use it in the way that you want. And often open education resources have a license on them that are called a Creative Commons license. And that is really important. You might see this visually on the website or on the asset, and it's a little gray rectangle with a black circle oval in it and with CC in white letters. So that's Creative Commons. And there are different type of licenses that give you the permission to use it. Because when people create something with copyright, they control its use, but when someone puts a Creative Commons license on it, it gives you permission to use it. So, this is when Kate and Noah can say, great, I can use this because I have permission to use that material in my courses, and it gives my faculty that opportunity to choose those. Now, the other aspect in the landscape that's developing, think of the trees that are out there, and you can think of these as being collections of materials. Berlot, we've been around for 20 years. It's a collection of almost 80,000 free and open educational resources across all different disciplines. There's also the Open Education Commons, OER Commons are out there, and there are other collections or organizations of materials. There's, as I mentioned already, the Directory of Open Access Journals articles, so you have another collection of materials there as well. And it's not only organizations, but institutions are starting to create their own collections or libraries of materials. In California, we have the California Open Online Library for Education. The acronym is COOL for Ed, and that's where we're aligning the collections of open textbooks with the courses that we're teaching. And so again, in that landscape, you have your individual flowers, you have the collections of the trees, and animals-wise, I think these are the people and the staff, and I think this has been a very important element. Librarians, you're starting to see OER librarians emerging in the environment. You're seeing instructional designers becoming very skilled and knowledgeable about open education resources, faculty themselves, and Noah and Kate as people who are the content experts helping transform that occurs. So in looking at the landscape from the individual OER assets to collections to the people, I think there is it has really grown in the availability and understanding of open education resources, so that the infrastructure or the ground in which all these things grow, and this now I'll pass it over to Mike to really talk about some of this infrastructure that's essential for letting all the flowers and the trees grow and the people to live around the delivery of materials, the integration into learning management systems that's now available, and the accessibility, ensuring that all students, including those with disabilities, can have access to these things. So Mike, I'll pass it over to you.
Sure, thanks, Jerry. I'll just add a little bit to that. What we're able to do is help take these collections of quality OER and do the things that Jerry said. But essentially what we're doing is making that content a first-class citizen in the same way we work with traditional publisher content. So we make it so it's able to reach students easily from the place where they are when they need it. And that is, they go to their course in the LMS and they just click and it falls open. If they want to download it, they can download it. If they have a visual impairment, we have accessibility. We take care of that. And the discoverability in being a part of our catalog. I would add that one of the things we hear in the marketplace is lots of interest in OER, but difficulty sort of deciding, what's right for their particular course. And we help some with making it a part of our catalog, but one of the reasons we're excited about our partnership, our long-time partnership with EdMap, is EdMap provides a curation services and can work directly with institutions to help them decide what content is appropriate, as well as perhaps manipulate that content. And we have tools that can be used to do that, because as Jerry mentioned, with the Creative Commons, you can manipulate the content, and there are rules around that. But we have a set of technologies we call VitalSource Content Studio, where you can ingest current content as well as edit, add assessments, and make it a full learning solutions. And EdMap's team can work directly with schools to do that.
Excellent. Thanks, Mike. And there's a question in the chat box for you if you have a minute to answer that. I'm just curious if anyone else has any of our panelists would like to add a little bit about the ever-evolving landscape of OER and digital resources.
Yeah, let me address this question real quick. The question is from Jay Gary. So we asking that we integrate selective OER, is that after an upgrade to EPUB 3? So the question there is, any OER, if it's PDF or any flavor of EPUB, we can also handle other formats, but those are the ideal formats. So in some cases, if someone requests an upgrade to EPUB 3, we can provide that. But if it requires manipulation, we'll do that if an institution asks, or they may choose another service provider to do that, and we can deliver it.
Great, thanks, Mike. And Noah and Kate, do you have anything to add about the landscape?
This is Noah, and I would definitely add that in the past 2 years, that OER landscape has definitely progressed for my specific institution. I think in the past it has been this thing of, unfortunately, just there just wasn't enough acknowledgement of the OERs here at Hodges University, and so really looking into that, and I think there was this mindset as well as that, oh, the OER formats, that's not going to be able to provide the high quality benefits to our students like we need. Well, come to find out, that is the complete opposite. All of these OERs and the way that they are utilized works very, very well and is very successful for our student population that, within our courses that we are using OERs. And so I think that, that landscape has really changed, over the past few years of making sure that, everyone knows, whether it's the academic side, it's the administrative side, that the OERs are very helpful and they are useful in all of our courses. And again, for my side of things, it's affordability aspect as well, not just that high quality and succession rate. The affordability there, it's so awesome that you can get a lot of these materials at free or very reduced cost. So yes, the landscape has changed very significantly for the better, I think.
Excellent, thanks, Noah. And to just keep, I'm also watching the time, and we have a lot of content to go to. So hoping we're going to move along to the next topic of the environment. So, within this landscape, there are many different environments. And I'm curious, Kate, if you can explain a little bit about what you've talked about as a controlled OER environment. In previous dialogue, you've mentioned this, and I'm curious if you can explain the term to the audience and tell us a little bit about how you think it differs from other environments.
Yeah, thank you. So I think that this is a really good segue in that the conversation that we've been having is really about the growth of OER and the importance of using it and how easy it is to use. And I would offer a counterpoint, which for us is, we really wanted to engage in OER and really made an effort toward finding that content and curating it into our courses. And what we find is that it isn't exactly free, and it isn't always aligned for us, especially when we are granting mostly master's and doctoral degrees. We don't necessarily see the type of leveling in OER that we would need in order for it to be useful for us. So when I say controlled environment, I'd say what we're at the point with OER, what we're trying to understand is, where is it going to be most valuable for us, and what are the steps to using it that are going to drive affordability and drive a good learner experience, the accessibility component, not just in terms of, is it web content accessibility guideline accessible, but also is it easy for our learners to get to it, and is it stable enough for our learners to get to it? The great, wild interwebs are extremely dynamic, and OER, I think, can definitely be impacted by that. So we find that the rate of change for open sources is faster than the rate of change for our courses. So when I say controlled environment, we really use our centralized curriculum and course development group to curate the OER from the great wide world, and then we require permissions and tracking and some logistics and administration that I think maybe other institutions don't necessarily need to engage in or want to. But for us, we don't use any non-commercial content, so then it adds a layer of complexity. So we want to make sure that the links are stable, that they're inside the Blackboard LMS, which we use, and then that we have another way of tracking it. So we can maintain those links and make sure that they're not going dead, because it's a terrible learner experience to go, complete a discussion at, 11 p.m. at night, and then to click on the link you need to read in order to do that discussion and have it not work. So for us, when I say controlled, we tend to be more and more cautious about how we use OER instead of less and less cautious. But I hope that we can get over that hump and really identify what the sweet spot is for us.
So just to follow up, Kate, are you seeing that you use most OER with a specific student population or with introductory level classes? Have you gotten to that point at Capella?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I think our focus area for OER is really in the undergrad space. So I find a ton of gen ed content online, but even beyond that, there's a lot of undergrad. And I would say from a vertical perspective, even there's a lot of MBA content, a lot of business content out there too. So it's just a matter of really figuring out like what is available. And frankly, if you're getting a PhD in community college administration, it's just not, there isn't a lot of OER out there. There's a publisher or there's a professional organization that really has that higher level of content. But, even in areas where you wouldn't expect it, I guess at the gut level, such as nursing, for example, we find a lot of OER, a lot of even other types of web content to support the courses that allow us to pull back on the total amount of premium publisher content that we have in courses so that we can drive affordability for the learner.
And thanks, Kate. And Mike, would you second that from the perspective from VitalSource that you're seeing a lot of use in gen ed courses in undergrad and perhaps business classes?
That is the place where it pops up. I'd be interested to hear from Jerry across the collections that he's helped put together. Where's most of that content? Is it primarily for these intro level courses, or what's the range?
Right. So, and one of the collections is OpenStax, and in the chat, someone has identified this is a collection of the typical lower division, high enrollment courses where they've created very high quality open textbooks. And so it is going to be at that level. You're going to see a lot of the other learning objects that are going to be more at the lower division and a little bit of upper division classes there. I think I think one of the things to think about, and this is partly a question that was asked earlier, are your libraries, which provide free access to every student in your course, is another resource to keep the affordability of education down. And those open access journals, as well as your normal journal articles that are free to access to students, can be very useful at the upper division courses or in graduate programs. So I think there are depending upon your definition or the umbrella under which open resources, you want to look at that collection, you really can have a strategy that's good at your lower division as well as upper division and even graduate programs.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jerry. I would second that. In my experience, and for all of you working on this, it's like get to know your librarian. There's so many resources that are already available to you, and there's options to expand those resources within your library and within the different collections they have. So you already have probably a vast amount of resources at your fingertips, and it's just figuring out how to utilize those and working with your faculty, instructional designers, and librarians.
This is Kate, and I would like to weigh in on that library component because that's something we have definitely done, is driven a lot of our access to instructional resources through our library, but it's not totally without cost. So I just want to point that out, that the library is a collection for us of digital databases, and the more we drive up the FTEs that are using it, the more the cost for the library goes up too. So there is a hydraulics equation that happens as we send more and more of our learners to the library. At least that's been our experience.
I would just add in there, you have to think about what the use of the particular content is in terms of what should be in the library versus what should be available to the students wherever they need it, whenever they are. So the more critical the course content is, it should probably be delivered on their mobile device in their course. But if it's something they only need every once in a while, library is just a perfect place for them to interact with it.
It's a great point.
Yeah. And I think.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Sorry. Yeah, and I think here, this is an important element here, is what is the institutional priority for ensuring that all your students have access to the quality materials required for learning in the course. And we do a lot of things where the institution pays for your learning management system, pays for a whole lot of other things. And when we say, you know what, we're not going to pay for the content that's required in your course, sometimes it's a little bit, I'll just say, contradictory with the mission of the institution. So this is where, and in the CSU, I purchase about $20 million a year in library content. Given the size of our institution, stuff like that. And that's always that battle of who is going to pay for these resources. And open education is one mechanism, but if we look at the outcome as not just a free education, it's really about a good education that everyone can afford. This really creates that, and I'll say, important discussion about your institutional strategy of supporting the library with the funding. And as we're in education, we know money doesn't flow from trees. It's, when I described the landscape, there wasn't a money tree there. And that really becomes some of the challenges.
Let me add one thing and answer something from the chat from Jay Gary. What we're describing, it's been in the chat, and what Jerry was talking about is really, I think we all care about this, we should be thinking first about making sure students get what they need to be successful in the course. And getting that on day one for the critical course content is really important. And interestingly, the ability for OER to participate as a first-class citizen with publishers is important because the publishers have certainly gotten around this as well. And you'll hear programs out there, Follett has Include Ed, Pearson has DDA. It's all the same thing. It's just about delivering content on day one, and publishers are willing to give a lower price for that. But it's all really the same thing. And I noticed somebody from Tarrant talking about implementing a program. The key is getting it on day one in an affordable way. But it should always be about quality and affordability. And so that's the important reason for making sure OER has a chance to play as a first-class citizen with publisher content. Then it can be evaluated on both quality and on price.
Great, thanks, Mike. And I'm going to move us along a little bit because I am watching the time. This is such a great conversation. I feel like we could have a follow-up webinar. I'm going to jump in and ask Jerry to tell us a little bit about the Skills Common Initiative and its contribution to the OER movement.
Okay. Skills Commons is a project with the U.S. Department of Labor. In 2011, the U.S. Department of Labor announced a program called the TACT program, the Trade Authorization. Crap! I can't believe I'm blanking on the name here. Trade Assistance Authorization for Community Colleges and Career Training. Sorry, folks. They distributed $2 billion to about 700 community colleges to transform their educational programs to become more workforce ready. And one of the requirements was the institutions had to put a Creative Commons license, CC BY, on all the materials. And as people were creating these materials, they asked, the U.S. Department of Labor asked me, the Merlot and the California State University, to create the library of all these materials. So right now we have, and thank you, Ray, for putting the information up there for TACT. So right up there, now we have about 2 rounds of the grants that were distributed in the collection, and the collection has free and open materials in manufacturing, in IT, in healthcare, in agriculture, in a sense, all these different workforce development areas. And what's good about these, and this is a point that Kate made early on, is you want to make sure these are available for you so you can actually download the materials and put them in your own learning management system so you are control them. You also can edit them. It's a point that Mike made around a value of open education resources with a Creative Commons license. You can customize it for your own institution. And I think those are important elements there. So this is available, skillscommons.org, and we've put materials up there. We have showcases where you can see whole programs that you can download and use in cybersecurity and in healthcare and a whole variety of areas. So I hope that was a quick overview there.
Yeah, that's great, Jerry. And I think that's, that's Skills Common and Merlot are the resources that many of us have come to depend on and are starting to learn how to use. Noah, I'm curious what you're seeing in terms of selection, in terms of working with faculty, administrators, publishers, kind of who's driving that selection, and how are you finding that working at your institution?
For our institution, I'm really seeing our faculty and students really driving that of what we're selecting as OERs, what courses we're selecting, what materials we're using, because a big aspect of my institution is we are a very non-traditional, mature, I guess you could say, type student. That when you're talking about digital migration, OERs, etc., that most of it is electronic, you get to this aspect where they're very afraid to go in that direction, unfortunately. So really talking with our faculty to see, okay, first of all, what of all those OERs are going to be most useful for the student? What's going to be that high quality material that's going to allow them to learn a lot in those courses? And again, what's going to make them successful in that course? Because we're all in it to actually have our students graduate, be successful with their degrees. And so I've been really looking at this very closely with our faculty members, our academic teams, and again, with student advocate teams that, people that are from different programs, different academic levels, really speaking with them one-on-one to really see what they're wanting and what type of information and OER type information is going to be useful to them and helpful with them in all of their courses and their programs.
Great, thanks, Noah. That's excellent insight and kind of really sheds light on the array of folks working with the students and working in this OER and digital effort. Kate, did you have anything to add to that?
I think Noah did a nice job of outlining that. I mean, for us, I would just say that there's almost no one who isn't touched by this kind of migration, right? We've had to work very closely with all of the different populations, working with our students to help them understand the learning curve and using digital materials. It's a really critical component, is showing them what the value and the benefit to them is of using digital resources. And then, you know, pushing that out also to the faculty to help reinforce that message. And they don't necessarily have to shift how they're doing things, but I think it's really helpful when you have faculty who are leading the charge and saying, this is why we're using digital resources and this is why it's important. And I think, you know, there was a comment in the chat too about students being able to really discern types of digital content. So I think there's, you know, there's some innate value in allowing our learners to access both, you know, curated publisher content and open web content and library content, and teaching them how to use each of those types of digital content, because that's going to be important in their careers and in their lives as they move forward. So, you know, the only other thing I would say is that from a digital migration and operations perspective, the thing that I think is most exciting as an institution that has now reached kind of critical mass in digital content is how can we start measuring that content to understand if it is driving our learners' success and persistence and graduation. So that's where that's a space I'm really interested to move into from here.
Great. Jill, is it okay if I just jump on the comment that Kate just made? Yeah. So folks, there was the Florida University has conducted a survey over a number of years of over 20,000 students and asked them about the impact of the cost of textbooks on their education. And it's about 2/3 say most of them don't buy some of their textbooks. Almost 48% say they take fewer units per semester because of the cost of the textbooks, and about 25% of them say they have failed a course because they couldn't afford the textbook. So now that's the student view on it. So that's not the data of whether they are really failing or not, or how many units they're really taking. It's a student view on it, but the size of those numbers, I think, are significant. And when you have an institution like Cal State, where we're trying to improve our graduation rates, reduce the time to degree, the affordability of your course materials has an important impact, on that. And it's raising the awareness so faculty understand, and working with them closely is really important there. And if I think on Noah's point, I think many times people think bookstores are going to be the enemy of OER. And in fact, in California, we find working with our bookstores is such an important partnership, because they work with all the faculty to help them find the resources in all different ways. And so that's why I just want to encourage folks out there, whether you got Follett, Barnes & Noble, or an independent store, your bookstores can really be an important part in your affordable learning solution strategy. It's really, they are essential partners.
Great.
Sorry for going on there.
No, that's a great point, Jerry, and I'm glad you brought up the study out of Florida. I'm sure all of us as panelists and many of us on the call have had experience in teaching students and working with faculty to try to help students get through a course when they're halfway through the course and don't have the materials. So, the being able to serve students with the open resources and that kind of on-demand in the class resource, I think, is really strategic and helpful, and helping to push towards retention and persistence rates, better retention and persistence rates. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, because I think we're all interested, and one of the reasons we came together today to talk about scale. So maybe some of us have instituted digital and OER resources in our courses and have started with 1 to 10, 20 courses, but how do we really look at scaling this initiative up? What are some tips in order to do that? And I'll open the question up to anyone on the panel.
Okay, if you don't mind, I'll just start real quick, and then I'll say what's to scale. You have to think about a communication campaign is going to be essential to raise the awareness of these things. And then you have to make it really easy for people. You have to create convenience. So looking at the technology infrastructure, the delivery, I think Kate emphasized how you have to, and Mike emphasized how you have to integrate this, leveraging all the content providers. And that's a point that Noah's making about how do you have to bring materials from the bookstores, publishers, and you got libraries, etc. And then enabling your leadership is going to be essential. Make sure they set it as a priority. And then the critical key factor is scaling this up is, again, a communication, professional development, training, support. So you can't think of this as just it's not a technology strategy, and it's not just a content strategy. It really has to be an institutional strategy that engages many different levels of your organization there.
And I will echo what Jerry just said. I had 2 previous webinars with EdMap, and that was one of the things that we really talked about. Was it sounds so simple, but that communication aspect is key to everything. And whether that communication is, you're communicating with the students, but it doesn't just end there. You have to communicate with the academic side, with the administrative side, with the community of, honestly, of what you're trying to accomplish and how you're really trying to assist the students. And not just what you're trying to accomplish, but really the details of, how all these systems work, how the OERs work, how digital material is going to be successful within their courses, and how they utilize that material. So yes, I mean, I definitely agree with Jerry that, communication is key in this.
This is Kate, and I would add that there's really an operational component here from an institutional perspective. Hello, this is Kate. I think I got disconnected.
Yep. Oh, we hear you back, Kate. So great.
Okay, great. I was just saying you need an operational plan as an institution for how to manage the OER that you put into your courses. So how are you going to check to make sure that the content stays live, stays aligned in the courses in the way that you've built them and the way that you intend for your learners to use it? So, for us, we do that on the course, in the course environment level. We're always checking to make sure that everything is functional, but I've heard other institutions say that they have other methodologies for managing that, because it's not a one and done. I think that's a really important component of OER, is that, it is this living, breathing thing, and so you need to make sure that it continues to be useful and valid in your courses.
And I would just add that, I think folks have been successful when they don't think about adopting OER just because it's OER. They adopt what works for their classroom, and it's not a question of publisher content versus OER. It's just what's the right content for your instruction, and then think about making sure you deliver it in a consistent way, whatever that. A learning infrastructure, and make sure it's used. And go back to one thing Jerry said, in every case, wherever you can make that easy, you should.
I'll add in here, be patient, be persistent, and measure. When an institution, and this is a case where our CalSTED LA they measured how much savings they produced by changing the type of content that are used in the campuses, and they hit $1 million. Then your president says, boy, this can make a difference. So I think this is making sure you measure the impact is going to be an important aspect. And again, this is where your bookstores, your libraries, and your faculty become very important partners in collecting this information.
Jill, do you want to go ahead and try once more? I think Jill's having some audio issues. Okay, still not hearing you. So we have around 100 people in here, so we'd like to go ahead and open it up to the audience and get to your questions and comments. So feel free to post those in the chat, and we will be here to take some questions. While we're waiting, any last final thoughts from our panelists?
Well, how about I'll just put a plug in for the Online Learning Consortium. I think their conferences so if you in the audience there are interested in learning more about affordable learning solution strategies, the open education resources, their conferences, both the Innovate conference, which Merlot does with OLC in April, and the Accelerate conference that OLC does. It's down in Florida in November. Those are just wonderful meetings where you can, talk to people, learn more of the details about how they make these strategies work in those institutions. And Merlot is, doing work with them on an ongoing basis to help institutions and people adopt the free and open education resources. Oh, so Rob Nyland asked, how did you get administrative buy-in at your institution for adopting OER? So, and Kate and Noah, since Jill's isn't working, do you want to respond to that one?
For Hodges University, we really started looking at the retention aspect of our courses, and so when you're thinking of the administration, they're looking at that retention rate, the success rate, and they're looking at the affordability rate as well. So when we were really looking at OERs, a digital migration, etc., we started really bringing up some of those things like Jerry was saying earlier from the survey that was completed in Florida, that we also had some of those surveys completed institutionally, internally, that students were really saying to us, hey, I'm not purchasing these items because they're so expensive, or I'm not successful, or I got a really horrible grade in one of my classes because unfortunately I didn't have this material. Or it might have even been this thing of I didn't have my material in time. I didn't have it on that first day of class. So when we started looking at those and those retention rates, we started deciding, hey, this is really a really great direction to go, not just for the affordability aspects, but again for that graduation rate and those retention rates of being successful as an institution. So that's what really I think was able to have our administration side, or president, CFO, et cetera, really buy into this new implementation.
For us, I've really seen at Capella that I've had a number of instances where faculty and deans have reached out to me and said, look, the most relevant, most affordable content available in our subject area is open educational resources. And can you help me then stabilize the learner experience and scale this across my program? So for us, I really see that it's more of a grassroots movement, that people are anxious to use OER. They want to have it in their courses. They're excited about the opportunities it offers from an affordability perspective, and also just, I think, from a high quality perspective, and for the most current, most interesting content related to certain subjects. So you know, for us, and it's really just making sure, and I think Mike and others mentioned this, about that the learner experience is consistent and that it isn't interfering with their ability to do their coursework. And I think, you know, it was, Jerry, did you mention that the concept of, you know, downloading the content into your course room so that you don't have to manage links, I think is really great. And there are other ways to do it, you know, putting it on the VitalSource bookshelf, another great way to deliver a good learner experience. So for us, it's just finding the right consistent path for scaling, and we're still very much in the process of doing that.
Right. And I'll say the both Kate and Noah's point of student success is often determined in the few first weeks of a class, and that's when, you know, when they've just paid their tuition, they're struggling with, you know, in a whole lot of ways, it's not just the total amount, it's the cash flow. And so when students start having troubles in the beginning of a course, then they tend to spiral down. And so that's why the point both are making, you know, having easy, convenient, immediate access on that first day of class is really important. And again, low cost and open education resources enable your institution to be able to provide that student that opportunity to succeed in those classes. So I'm not sure if Jill is back, but I'll just read the next one. What are the major challenges for faculty in transitioning to an OER textbook? Can you identify some common steps faculty found successful to successfully develop and or adopt OER? And so Kate to Noah, and Mike certainly too, but
Yeah, for us, what I've found the faculty struggle with most is the accessibility piece. So, you know, checking, you know, helping your faculty understand what are the steps to checking something to make sure it's ADA compliant, figuring out what the best way is to deliver it in the course room, which we pull that in internally to help faculty. And then I would say I get a little too far away from the process to say what the common steps are to follow successfully developing and adopting an OER. Noah, do you have more to say about that?
We have I guess what you call a course content strategist or a manager that are really working with all of our faculty and program chairs to see what is going to be best within their courses and what OERs are going to be most useful for their courses. And so, you know, I'm kind of in the same boat as Kate that yes, I am helping them with some aspects of it, but when it really comes to finding out what is best for their specific courses or their specific program, that really goes to, in my opinion, for, you know, a course content strategist or, you know, or a person who is really helping develop those courses.
right. Now in California State system and in each one of our campuses, I think the first essential element to help this is someone on a campus has to be passionately motivated and empowered to support a local initiative. And if you have that administrative support, then it's then you have from your reference librarians. And if you think about what the reference librarian's job is to enable faculty and students to find the information resources to meet their educational needs. And I say these finding people on your campus who already have the skill set and can help faculty have that personal conversation about their individual course is an important element, because there's a lot of learning that has to go on, and having someone who can, you know, again, introduce this concept into an institutional conversation. So in the early phases, having that personal work is very important. And I'll just say one campus where we have over half of the faculty members at Cal State Dominguez Hills have moved to a lower cost option. Some of it's OER, some of it's library materials, some of it's significantly lower cost publisher materials. It took an opportunity for the hand-holding to help that individual person think about their course and what they're trying to achieve. Then over time, when faculty talk to each other, and I put in the chat room, we create faculty showcases. We make our faculty who've done these things rock stars with little electronic posters, and they tell their story, and they include their syllabus so someone can see how do they do these things. So it's a process of change management, and when people think about it, is start with the individuals, create leaders, and then make sure you have the support services to scale up, and then the technology infrastructure such as VitalSource and EdMap provides can really help you move it from a few cottage industry activities into an institutional strategy.
Yeah, I couldn't emphasize that more. What Jerry said, you have to make the decision about why you're doing this and what you're doing. And the universities we worked with, there were about 600 in North America that have made the decision to ensure that all students get the content on day one. That decision, and it is a change management process, but by making that decision, it changes the way faculty and other academic leaders think about content. It really opens up a different conversation around content. And it is key to have at least one person who sort of owns that process with buy-in from others.
Okay, I think.
I'll just.
Yeah, go ahead.
Jim Vanderputten says he's a graduate faculty member and doesn't think about content in terms of ebooks. And I think that's the right way to think about it. You shouldn't think about whether you should adopt an ebook versus a print book. It should really be about what's the appropriate content for your course, and then what's the best way to deliver that content on day one with the tools to interact with it. So ebook, just going E alone is not a good reason to do it. It should first be about content. And the other side is almost any content can be delivered as an ebook or an enhanced book. And the advantage you get is by delivering on day one.
Great, thank you for addressing that comment. I think Jill's still having issues getting back in, but we are just about at our time, so I would just like to wrap up and say thank you for everyone for attending today. Thank you for engaging in the chat, sharing those resources, asking questions at the end. Thank you so much to our panel for being here today and shedding insight on this important topic. So on behalf
of the panelists, thank you very much for attending, because it sounded like the moderator got cut off.
Sorry about that. Yes, thank you, Jerry. Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome.
Congratulations today. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. And if anyone has questions about Merlot, feel free to contact me.